You're listening to the Mindful Mama Podcast, episode 137. Today, we're talking about self-care for anxious times with Carla Naumburg. Welcome to the Mindful Mama Podcast. Here it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have, and when you have calm within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clarke-FIELDS, Mindful Mama Mentor. I coach overstressed moms on how to cultivate calm in their daily lives and to create more peace and cooperation in their families. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of the Mindful Parenting course, and I'm the mom of two girls. They are now ages 11 and 8. And there are still challenges, trust me. I'm welcome to the podcast. Welcome back. If this is your first time to the Mindful Mama podcast, special welcome to you. I'm so glad you are here. Whether you're new or you're returning, it's great to connect. In just a moment, I'm going to be sitting down with my friend Carla Naumburg, who is an author and clinical social worker. She'll introduce herself. And we are going to be talking about how to take care of ourselves in these crazy times. So I don't know about you, but the events of the days, the news of the days have been making me feel a little anxious. Feels like the world feels uncertain and with the news and all the craziness in the world, and it can affect us really deeply. So how do we deal with the feelings that come up? So Carla and I are going to talk about the symptoms and triggers of anxiety, how it impacts our parenting and how it can provoke anxiety in our kids. And you're going to hear that, sometimes even the push towards happiness can make things harder sometimes, and how feelings are not meant to be fixed. They are meant to be felt. And I want you to hear our conversation around this because it really, really is so important. And sometimes it can feel like, oh my gosh, I don't want to listen to this. But the truth is, the more skillfully we can take care of these feelings, the more joy we can actually feel in our lives. So I'm excited for you to hear this conversation. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick shout out. Thank you so much to Highly Sensitive Person who gave a 5-star review on iTunes, and to Raynor's mama. And she started listening to them from the beginning. It's helping me to finally understand myself at 38 years old, she writes. This is so cool. So thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you to Caroy William. Yes, thank you for your podcast review. Her Southern California fan. Cool. Thank you so much for those reviews. Remember, it's a great way to support the podcast, to help more people hear the messages the things we talk about here, to support the revolution of mindfulness that we're really about here. It really makes a big difference. And hey, Karoy Mama and other Southern California fans and friends and listeners, I want to let you know that I have a spot open in my one-day California retreat that's going to happen on November 2nd, 2018. I'm sorry if you two are listening, but yeah, I have a spot open. I would love to connect with you in person. This is going to be an intimate group. It can be very transformational to do this in-person immersive retreat experience. It's about getting some balance from all the craziness. So you can find out more about that at mindfulmamamentor.com/California. So there's just like 1 or 2 spots left, I think, as I record this. So I hope that this spot is open when this comes out. But please check it out, and I would love to connect with you in person. That'd be so cool. All right, now join me at the table as I talk to Carla. Carla Naumburg, welcome back again to the Mindful Mama podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
Hunter, I love you. I'm so happy to be here.
Will you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Carla Naumburg, and I am a licensed clinical social worker and a parent coach and the author of 3 parenting books, including the forthcoming How to Stop Losing Your Beep with Your Kids. See what I did there, Hunter? I beeped myself, so you don't have to go back and do it. the book actually has the word in the title, but I'm trying to keep it clean for Hunter, as you all know. So yeah, I'm working on this awesome book that's going to come out, I believe, around the same time that your awesome book is going to come out.
Should I reveal the title here?
Oh, wait. I didn't finish my introduction. I also have to say, yeah. So I live outside of Boston, and I have a delightful husband and two mostly delightful children who I adore. They're in 3rd and 4th grades, and two totally insane cats.
All right. That's cool. One of my very non-insane cats is chilling right outside my window right now while we talk. So
that's cute. Oh, wait. So you were thinking about just like revealing the title of your book. By the way, I love the title of your book, but I think that you should reveal it at the end of the podcast.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Ooh, we're so tricky.
Yeah, because I have no idea how to do it. I'm just like, okay, now I know the title. What do I do?
It's a great title.
All right. You guys, dear listener, we will let you know the title of my book coming out also around February 2019, at the end of this podcast. So stay tuned.
Oh, your book's coming out in February?
We're going to talk about self-care for anxious times. And I just want to preface this by saying that as we're recording this, I guess it was last week, wasn't it? Just last week we had a big event in our country. So you're listening in the future. You could be listening 2 years in the future, but we're going to talk about what to do with yourself in any kind of anxious time. But as we are recording now, we've just come off the week of the Kavanaugh Supreme Court Justice hearings and just Dr. Ford's allegations of sexual assault. And the whole country was watching these hearings. And in fact, just to give you a preview of what's been happening in my life, that when the day these hearings were happening, I had family visiting, and just like many people, some members of my family were re-triggered assaults and traumas in their past and revealed to me, and it's just intense. And so there was a lot of feeling of uncertainty and anxiety that's kind of running through the air these days. Would you agree, Carla?
Oh, it's absolutely agree. And
yeah, Hunter, look, I think you nailed it. And this story is still very much alive. It's in the news. The votes are happening now. So it's a big deal. And I think in addition to triggering people who have a history of some sort of sexual assault, it's also really triggered a lot of anxiety in a lot of folks. And we are already a nation and a people, and especially parents, that struggle with anxiety. And then when big news happens, it can just add on to it. So I'm really excited we're talking about anxiety today, because it's a topic I feel very passionate about, and I think it's super important.
So, listener, we are going to talk about some ways that, whether this is the past for you, right? But whatever the times are, there's always anxieties that pop up, and we all deal with it in some level or another. We generally suffer, and there's reasons we've talked about a lot about that, why we have anxiety and why we're struggling to survive. So we're going to talk today about what is anxiety, what are some of the symptoms that happen, what are some of the triggers, how it impacts your parenting, and then we're going to talk about what to do about it. So hopefully Carla has had her coffee this morning. I have had my green tea. Coffee triggers is a little anxiety provoking for me, Carla. I'm just saying. That's
your tea thing is anxiety provoking for me, because I feel like I should be no, I'm okay. Yes, I've had the coffee. Can you not tell by how fast I'm talking? But let's talk about anxiety. So I think the first thing that feels very important to me is to get very clear with our listeners about what anxiety is. And I think people have a general sense that it's sort of worry about what might or could or might not possibly happen in our lives. But I think people often stop at this sense of worry, and there's a lot more to anxiety than that. Certainly worry is an important part of it, and the sense that we can't control the worry, that it pops up when we don't want it there, that it lingers longer than we would like it to last, and that it feels very uncontrollable is an important part of anxiety. Mm-hmm. But there's actually other symptoms of anxiety that I think often get overlooked. For example, folks who are dealing with this may feel really sort of restless or keyed up or tense, on edge. That's an important part of anxiety. it's hard to sleep. It may be hard to fall asleep. You may wake up in the middle of the night worrying about things, or you may wake up earlier than you want or need to. And you feel tired, partially because you're not sleeping and partially because it is exhausting to feel tense and keyed up and worried all the time. Difficulty concentrating, having a hard time staying focused on the work you need to do or something you're reading, or feeling like your mind is going blank and you just kind of don't know what to say or do and you're not really sure why it's happening. Tense muscles. People with anxiety often walk around. My big one is I like to wear my shoulders up like earrings around my ears. And, when I finally notice and drop my shoulders, I'm like, oh my gosh. Or, a furrowed brow, like a tense forehead, clenched jaw. A lot of people hold their anxiety, in their neck, shoulders, back. So that's part of it. And then I think the biggest part of anxiety that many people overlook or don't realize is a part of the picture is irritability. Mm-hmm. So I wrote about this a lot in my book, How to Stop Losing Your Temper with Your Kids. Trying to be cleaning up here for you, Hunter, because I think people don't realize why they're irritable. And there are obviously many reasons why we can be cranky, but anxiety is a big one. So I just wanted to really kind of lay out those symptoms. And for some folks, anxiety really feels like it lives more in your head and in your thoughts. And for some folks, it really is a very embodied experience. Stomach aches, tension, headaches. And for most folks, it's a combination of both. And it absolutely affects, our relationships, our ability to be functional at work, our ability to stay focused and get things done. Anxiety absolutely impacts every aspect of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're on alert, right? It's our body's alert system saying, be on alert, watch out. Imagine we have trouble digesting, our bellies don't feel good because your body's turning the energy away from digestion and towards tensing the muscles, being ready for things to happen. But I think what we're talking about too here is like kind of what a lot of people suffer from, it seems like, is like just a generalized anxiety. Like it's not like we're keyed up and ready for an event to happen. Most of us aren't like anxious before we get on a stage to speak or something like that. Like a lot of us are just feeling a general sense of anxiety and uncertainty about the world when times get crazy like this.
Absolutely. And you made a really important point there, Hunter, which is there are a lot of different sort of variations of anxiety. It comes in many different flavors. And phobias are a source of anxiety. So you mentioned getting up on a stage. We call that social phobia or social anxiety. Agoraphobia, fear of kind of leaving your house, that's another one. Panic attacks are a form of anxiety. So yeah, what I was talking about was what we in the profession call the generalized anxiety disorder. It's just sort of this pervasive sense of anxiety and worry. And technically, you're not supposed to be diagnosed with it until you've been dealing with these symptoms for about 6 months. But I think many of us have this experience intermittently in ways that absolutely impact our lives. And I just want to make one thing clear is that you had mentioned this sort of fear of impending, like something's going to happen and we need to be on alert and fight or flight. And that can be part of anxiety, but we can also think of that as hypervigilance, which is something that often goes along with post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. So they're very similar. They're not always the same, but yeah, I think the idea is the same. And I think there's no question that when things feel more chaotic in the world, it absolutely triggers our anxiety. And, my colleagues in the therapy world, social workers, psychologists, definitely mention that their clients are coming in more and more with anxiety since we've been in a time of more sort of political upheaval and unpredictability. So yes, events in the outside world are absolutely triggers. We can be genetically loaded for anxiety. I certainly am. I come by it honestly from both sides of my family. In addition, the things that happen in our lives, small traumas and big traumas, they can trigger this anxiety and make us feel, very worried, and just living in the world we do, where it's this constant flow of information and advice. And this is no more real than it is with parents. I mean, we are constantly being told that, you have to get this parenting thing right, or your kid will never be happy and successful and, live a meaningful life. And if you get it wrong, oh man, they're going to be suffering for all of eternity. And that sort of constant pressure and advice is absolutely anxiety producing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So it's coming at us from all sides. It's like sometimes I think like, gosh, maybe we were maybe we were better off when we were like I don't know. Sometimes I think we were better off when we living in huts and little villages and we all could see each other and we could be out in nature and we could pass our children off to another generation of people. And there wasn't so much information. Sometimes you're right. Like all the information makes us a little nuts, like there has so and that's something I want to talk about too, like so we have some of these triggers, right, are some things like the news. And when we're in anxious times, when there's stuff going on, many of us feel pressure to, like, I don't know, my family was on vacation and they were retired. So they were like sitting there watching these hearings, the whole thing. And I was walking in and out and kind of watching it a little bit. But I mean, with a lot going on in the world, there's a pressure to keep up on it. But some of these things can be triggering our anxiety. So there's a sense of like, I think it's hard for us to know now when to say yes to kind of diving into all the news and all that's going on, and when to like give ourselves a break. Like it's hard to even know when to do that. I don't know. Do you know what you think?
No. Yeah. Yes. Look, let's think about this. I think you're absolutely right that many of us feel sort of a sense of social and civic responsibility to stay connected to the news and current events. Mm-hmm. I understand that and I agree with it, sort of. So part of being a responsible and engaged citizen is also having the energy and wherewithal to participate in your community or in politics or in daily life or whatever it is in a way that's meaningful for you. And if you are so overwhelmed and anxious and stressed out and maxed out, you're not going to have anything left to give. So here's what I recommend for folks who, and I think this also applies to sort of parenting advice and information. So here's how I generally think about it. If we're talking about general news and information, national news, first of all, figure out the way to consume the news that is not triggering for you. So I read the newspaper online in the morning, and then I intermittently listen to National Public Radio throughout the day in snippets. That's it. I never watch news on TV. I think it's insane and absolutely triggering. And I try my hardest to not go on social media or check any of this stuff in the evenings because it can trigger my anxiety too much. And how does social media trigger our anxiety? Well, it can be anything from the news that, but then all of a sudden you see something about a random child who's died somewhere in the world. And before the age of social media, you never would have known that. And it's okay. Like, it's okay that you didn't know that. And all of a sudden this is in your brain and it can trigger like, oh my God, what if something happens to my kids? It absolutely sends me there. So it's that surprising information that we wouldn't have known otherwise. And also, there's a lot of clickbait headlines out there and really graphic images that are specifically designed to grab our attention and, make us click on them, whether because it seems super interesting or it seems super scary. And we're like, oh gosh, I need to know more to make sure it's not relevant to me or whatever. So and that's the national. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And all of this feeds our distraction too, right? Like this sense of like completely feeling distracted is really kind of the opposite of feeling present and mindful, right? Which is where we are wanting to sort of what I'm in general wanting to promote, being present and mindful, because we know that promotes feelings of well-being. It reduces anxiety as we start to practice being more present and start single tasking, start being in reality with our children, like being really present for them, not feeling our minds racing so much. Then we start to feel better. We start to have better health outcomes. We start to feel less depressed and less anxious and more well-being and more happiness, right? And so if we are diving into these things all the time, just because it kind of triggers this like need for this part of ourselves wants this part distraction, we have to kind of think, okay, well, this might feel good, but it's kind of like your Hershey bar or it's like
don't go after my chocolate, Hunter.
Okay.
It's chocolate is sacred.
It's like do you remember the dipping thing where you like dip a piece of candy into a piece? It's like the pixie sticks
Yes. Oh, you can totally
of
go
our
after the
attention.
pixie stick. That's cool. Yes. You know what we used to do in summer camp? It's so gross. We would pour Tang into Tang, the powder that you would use to make crap orange juice. We'd pour the Tang into the lid, and then we'd sit in a circle around it and lick our fingers and stick it in the communal Tang pot and then lick it off and then stick our finger. Isn't that disgusting? I can't. Oh my God. What if my kids do that someday? Oh, no, look, Hunter, the point is very well taken. Back to the distraction thing, which clearly I'm struggling with, i.e. Tang. And the way I think about this is we are always practicing something. Yeah. And if we are practicing our mind jumping from one thing to another, constantly scrolling, if a screen's not in front of us, our mind will keep doing that anyway. And not knowing where your thoughts are going to land next and not knowing what to do with them when they land on something super unpleasant is incredibly anxiety provoking. So I think that's the national news is one source of anxiety for sure, but I think also too much advice, and specifically in life in general, but also for parents, is completely anxiety provoking. And I realize this is a bit rich coming from someone who literally makes for a living giving advice to people about how to parent, but let me offer it up to you this way. What I recommend for parents is, again, if you feel like you're in need of advice, think about how you want to consume it. Do you want to read a book that doesn't involve a screen? Do you want to listen to Hunter's amazing podcast where you hear people hopefully offering, the advice in a way that isn't super triggering or upsetting and you can hear it without flipping out? Or here's my favorite one. Do you want to talk to an expert who's going to get to really know you and your family and can give you the advice that isn't going to freak you out, isn't going to send you off down some rabbit hole that is totally irrelevant, and knows enough about your family's specific structure and style and preferences and needs that they can give you really relevant advice? So when I have a health concern about my daughters, I go to our pediatrician who has known us for a decade, and I ask her the question and I do what she says because she's an expert. She knows my family super well, and I realize I'm really lucky to have this relationship with her. We don't always get to, have an ongoing relationship with a physician. I don't go searching on internet sites. I don't go asking my friends who are doctors because all that conflicting advice is overwhelming and anxiety producing. Oh God, which do I choose? What if I pick the wrong thing? I just go to my doctor and then I do what she says.
Yeah, we have to kind of cut through. It's interesting because it used to be, I think, we're in this time where everything's changing, where it used to be that we had to seek out things, we had to seek out knowledge, and we had to, even stuff like we were always kind of, waste not, want not kind of thing. And now we're in a world where we really do have to curate. We have to switch to curating. Yes. And it makes a big difference with our parenting because if we are restless, on edge, and irritable, we are crappy parents. Generally,
oh
at least
God.
I know I am. I'm a crappy parent when I'm restless, on edge, and irritable.
Absolutely. And I think that anxiety sucks for many, many reasons. But partially is, yes, look, it makes it hard to parent when you are barely functioning yourself. But our anxiety can have also a very direct impact on the choices we make as parents. And this often comes out in the way we either intentionally or inadvertently communicate our anxiety to our children. Mm. So, here's what this looks like for me. My daughter has asthma. We're trying to get it under control right now. And she's on 2 inhalers 3 times a day prophylactically to try to manage it. She's fine with this. This is not a huge issue for her. But I'm like, Frida, if I don't catch myself, I'll say to Frida, did you take your inhalers? Did you talk to the school nurse? Did you go see the school nurse? Did you do your inhaler? And that's my anxiety. Mm-hmm. And if I don't catch myself and take a deep breath and find a calmer way to check in about this, or trust that my daughter's actually really good about her inhalers, which she is, then I'm going to build her anxiety about it. Mm-hmm. And so, if you have a plan for your kid and they're going to go to a friend's house after school and you've worked out the plan, but then you keep asking them, okay, wait, when are you leaving and where are you going and what time are you going to call mommy and what's my phone number? You're not helping them get clear on the plan. Either they know it or they don't. Write it down on a piece of paper and hand it to them if you need to. But what you're doing is increasing their anxiety, because why would you be nagging them about it if there wasn't something that could go terribly wrong?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, you're so telling them this is unsafe.
Right. So check the plan, make sure they know it once, and then leave it alone. So I think that And our anxiety about parenting can also cause us to limit our children's options in ways that isn't helpful. And of course, many people have written about this, including Jessica Lahey, the author of The Gift of Failure, that we need to let our children fail. We need to let them go out in the world and make poor choices and have things end up wrong, so then they learn. If I never have driven a car and my parents are so anxious about it that they never let me drive a car, then I'm never going to learn how to be a safe driver. And then I go off to college and one of my friends like, let's go driving. And I'm too embarrassed to say I don't know how to drive. And I end up getting in an accident. I mean, that's just one example. And so I think that our anxiety as parents can lead us to limit our children's lives in ways that will ultimately make their lives harder and put challenges for them that they shouldn't have otherwise.
Oh, for sure. Dear listener, I am going to be releasing an interview with Lenore Skenazy coming up soon. And she gives some amazing statistics that will absolutely calm your anxiety about things. But like one of the limiting things we can do is our anxiety and our own fear can limit our kids' ability to, walk across the neighborhood, go outside and play, do all those different things. And we go deep into that in that podcast conversation that's coming up. But our job is to work ourselves out of a job, people. We need to slowly trust them more and more and teach them how to do things and then let go. Yes. And that can be
Lenore Skenazy, she's great. So Lenore Skenazy is the free range parenting person. She's written a book by that name. And I think she's an important voice in this conversation. So I can't wait to hear that podcast.
Oh, it was exciting. I loved talking to Lenore. So we're talking about all the ways anxiety is like not helping us. And let's just be clear that like our own sense of, our own sense of awareness and our own sense of fear has helpful things. We don't want to demonize it, but when left to just be this underlying thing in our lives, and when we don't take steps to say, okay, am I acting out of this? Am I not acting out of this? Then it has impacts. It has impacts on ourselves. It has impacts on our parenting. And so what do you do, Carla? This is something that we'll talk about now, how we take care of it. I mean, I know that you have worked with, your own you come by naturally anxiety in your life. So what are some things that are non-negotiable for you? And what are some things that you do when times are particularly anxious?
Oh, I freak out and go in the pantry and find the chocolate. Duh. No, okay.
The tang. The
craving
tang comes out.
What else would you do, Hunter? No, look, you are right. Like anxiety is my thing. It is my ongoing, if I'm going to be all like awesome and mindful about it, I would say it's my ongoing invitation to continue to sort of engage with myself and be curious about my experience and figure out what the hell's going on. When I'm less mindful, it sucks. It's this like demon on my shoulder that won't go away. But I've learned a huge amount and I'm happy to share it. So what do I do? First of all, I have to notice when I'm feeling anxious. And I have to notice not only when I'm feeling anxious in the moment, but when it is becoming a more persistent part of my life. And for me, irritability with my kids is a huge red flag that I'm anxious about something. Absolutely. That's when I'm like, what's going on here? When I find myself reaching for my phone more than I want to, that is a red flag that I'm trying to escape my anxiety. And so it's clearly triggered if I'm trying to escape it. Also, the dishwasher. Oh my gosh, Hunter, I become like a crazy woman about the dishwasher when I'm anxious. It's like, if that dishwasher does not get unloaded right now, the world is going to end. Like, get out of my, it's crazy. I don't know what it is. It's me and the dishwasher. Like, the rest of the house could be burning down. And I'm like, but the dishwasher. So there's that. So I think
I just really, have to say, you're not alone on the dishwasher. Like, for some reason.
Really?
Like, why can't you put away the dishwasher, the clean dishes? Ah!
I know. It's like a thing. So getting to know first of all, getting to know your triggers is super helpful. And, triggers, again, can be anything from national news to local news to something happening in your family to not getting enough sleep at night to drinking too much coffee. Although, side note, P.S., there's really no such thing as too much coffee. But in reality, there absolutely is. I'm kidding. Yes, I switched to decaf midway through the morning because I can't handle the caffeine.
Actually, I have a quick coffee story to share with you, because coffee is anxiety provoking. But my mom is a big coffee lover. She's a Rhode Islander. It's a thing, But so she would drink so much coffee when she was a nurse that when she was a nurse doing her rounds at night, actually twice they had to lay her down for heart palpitations because she.
Oh no, you're
so much coffee. Twice, like it was like 10 cups or some crazy amount. I don't know. Mom,
oh my goodness. Look, I love coffee, but in all honesty, I have a cup in the morning of full steam. Then I switch to decaf, and then around like 1 p.m. I have to cut it off entirely because even decaf coffee has a tiny amount of caffeine in it, and if you are a highly sensitive person like I am, then it can still get you going. So be careful with the caffeine. Okay, so back to me, of course, because that's what we're talking about. First of all, you have to get to know your triggers. For me, for example, here's a very specific trigger to me. When my daughters cough, it actually totally spikes my anxiety because when they were babies, they had horrible croup. My older daughter has cough variant asthma. We've had a ton of situations where I have been like driving them to the emergency room. And that happens so many times that now even a relatively innocent cough, I can notice my whole body tense up. So that for me is a very specific trigger. So triggers can be universal. Every time we hear of a school shooting, and I hate even saying that because I'm aware I might have just triggered some of our listeners, but I don't know a parent who isn't triggered by that. And then it can be also very, very specific, something that's unique to you. So knowing your triggers, the things that are going to set off your anxiety, and then knowing your tells. How does your body respond? Do you get a migraine? Do you shut down? Do you get super cranky? Do you get hyper-focused on your task list and everything you need to check off and do? So knowing your tells, your body and mind and behavior telling you like, hey, lady, whoa, things are lighting up here.
Your tells.
And then there are
T-E-L-S.
Yeah, your tells. T-E-L-L-S.
L-L-S.
Hi, Hunter. Hi. Maybe you need some coffee. No, it's like if you're sitting, like I took that from, what is it, poker, when you're sitting across from somebody and you see their eyebrow twitch and you're like, haha, I know they have the ace of spades. Like, these little behaviors you see in yourself that are like a signal that your anxiety is ramping up. Okay. So then what are you going to do about it? Right? Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I want people to remember, and I'm quoting this little nugget from my dear friend and colleague, Rachel Barbanel-Fried, is that every feeling has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And, the common analogy is like a wave. And that's a great analogy because feelings sort of grow and develop. And then eventually they get huge and feel overwhelming and they can feel dangerous and scary. And then they come crashing down and it feels like a giant mess. And then eventually they're just a little tiny thing creeping up on the shore and they go away. So feelings, even though when you're in the middle of a feeling, it can feel completely overwhelming and like take over your entire reality. They're just a feeling. They have a beginning, middle, and end, and they will not last forever.
No, Carla, I'm going to ask here. So I absolutely agree with you, right? Like every feeling, they come like waves, or, in the Buddhist literature, they talk about it, sort of like a cloud floating by or a leaf kind of floating by a river. Do you think that people can get what I've noticed working with my mindful parenting folks, working with my coaching clients, is that I notice that I feel like our feelings are like our toddlers. Like they're like, will you pay attention to me and look at me? Otherwise I'm never going to leave you alone, right? Like they tend to get stuck.
Oh, totally.
Don't pay attention to them. Yes. Okay.
But I think there are more and less skillful ways to pay attention to them.
Yes, true.
Because when we pay attention to them by getting angry or pissed off about them, or by sort of following that rabbit hole, like our thoughts can feed our feelings. Because remember, feelings, I think, are about sort of thoughts and what's happening in our body. And there are choices we can make that intensify them. So if you've been triggered by something and then you sort of are stewing and imagining everything that could go wrong, and you go to the internet and you start reading all the stories about stuff that could go wrong, and then you call up your friends and they tell you a story about a time that actually happened to them and it went really wrong, like this is all going to feed it. And so that's not how we want to pay attention to our feelings. How we want to pay attention to our feelings is by noticing and acknowledging them. And the word that often happens in the mindfulness community that we use a lot is accepting the present moment. And I think that word can be a little confusing for some people because they think it means that we have suddenly become powerless in the face of whatever's happening. And no matter how undesirable or unpleasant or crappy it is, we should just roll over and let it happen. And I don't love that. So I go with acknowledge, like, oh, I'm having a feeling. This sounds so basic. And yet so many human beings on the planet, including me, struggle to do this on a regular basis because it's not easy to do. But the minute you say, oh, I am anxious, I am feeling anxious in this moment, all of a sudden it's like noticing that a door has been closed and you can choose to open the door instead of just walking into a wall repeatedly and wondering why you're not getting through. So acknowledging that you're having a feeling is the first step. And then deciding, what do I want to do about this? What do I want to, how do I want to tend to this feeling? Do I need to go in the pantry and grab the chocolate for a minute? I'm not going to diss that too hard because it's certainly a go-to move of mine. It's not the most skillful because the sugar can continue to trigger anxiety, but I love chocolate. But, is this a moment where I need to wrap myself up in a nice warm blanket and sip a cup of tea and maybe put my kids in front of the TV set so I can do this and just kind of give myself some comfort? Is this a moment when I need to rely on my support system and call a spouse or a parenting partner or a good friend and have a nice cry if you can? Is this a moment where I can't do any of that because I'm in the car with my kids and I don't have that choice? So what I need to do is really focus on the present moment, on paying attention to the road, on repeatedly grounding myself in the reality around me, feeling the feel of the steering wheel under my hand, noticing the taillights, whatever it is. So there's a whole range of ways to respond to anxiety in the present moment that are compassionate to ourselves, are sort of honest about the feelings we're having, and that will help decrease the intensity of the feeling sooner. But you have to be willing to acknowledge that there's a wave coming or that you're right in the middle of the wave. And sometimes we just want to stand there and be like, there's no wave, everything's fine. It's my kids' fault. They're being jerks, because that's easier, honestly. Like, it can feel easier, but then you end up completely underwater, right?
Yeah.
And you feel like you're drowning and nothing changes.
There is a tendency to want to push through this. And I think, dear listener, you probably recognize this in yourself. I recognize it in myself. I tend to go on to the next thing, go on to our next thing on our to-do list. And we never want to, like Carla said, stop, pay attention and acknowledge these feelings. But this is so, so crucial that I have to underline it. Like, our feelings really are like, and our anxieties really are like toddlers that will not leave you alone unless you pay attention to them, and it will just keep going. And I want to also turn the listener to another resource. I did a podcast with Cedric Bertelli on the TIPI. It's called Turn on Your Healing Superpower. And he talks about an amazing process of really stopping and tuning into those physical sensations and letting our body's natural ability to heal itself work through us. But I think what you're talking about, Carla, here is so true, that we just want to skip over it. We just want to fix it. We just want to do the next thing. We just want it to go away. But I invite the listener instead to make a habit of actually stopping, actually paying attention to what's going on, breathing into it, noticing how it feels in your body. And sometimes I get so surprised. I may have been holding on to a feeling for 2 or 3 days, and then when I finally realize, oh, I can do something about this, I can sit and pay attention to it and breathe. And as I sit with it and feel the feeling, then it goes away. And it's like, oh.
Absolutely. And here's
days ago.
Yeah, Hunter, why didn't you do it days ago? No, but look, here's how I think about this. The clearest way, I think the biggest struggle we parents have with feelings is we want to fix them. So when our child has an unpleasant feeling, whether it's rage or fear or sadness or anxiety or boredom, we think that unpleasant feeling means that there is something wrong that needs to be fixed. This is not true. Feeling feelings is a normal part of daily life. It's just part of the deal of being human. We have a lot of feelings. And I think that it isn't our fault as parents that we experiencing this, because we live in an age of happiness where everyone's like, the goal in life is to be happy. And here's all the things you need to do to be happy. And if you're not happy, it's because you're not working hard enough. And this drives me banana pants. because it is not true. Life is hard. I almost said the SH word happens, but crap happens. See, I'm reining myself in. Bad things happen, unpleasant things, we get hurt, we have feel like that's life. So there's, it's like saying that a storm is wrong or a wave is wrong. And if we get caught in the rain, it's because we've done something wrong. It's just not true. So here's what I want to encourage our listeners to think about.
Amen, sister.
Feelings were, thank you very much. Feelings are not meant to be fixed. Feelings are meant to be felt.
Oh,
and when we feel them, either through our bodies or through our words or by connecting with a loved one who will just sit with us and let us cry and not try to give us advice on all the stuff we should have done differently. And the most interesting example I saw of this recently is Elizabeth Gilbert, who is the author most famously of Eat, Pray, Love, but she's written a bunch of other stuff. She's been very public on social media about losing her partner in the past year or two. Her partner died. And she's been in terrible grief. And she posted a video of a dear friend of hers doing this beautiful dance that it was just in somebody's living room. It wasn't like a performance, as a way of sort of working through this grief in her body. And it was fascinating to me because it's something that would never, ever occur to me. It's something I don't want to say I would never do, but I really can't imagine doing. It's not at all my style. But I deeply and intuitively understood this sense of moving your body to let this sort of anxious or grief or whatever energy move through. So that was her way of feeling her feelings and getting them out of her body. With me, when I'm anxious, I find that going for a long walk outside really helps. Doing a little bit of like vigorous yoga can really help. Or, hugging my kids, and sometimes just like saying, screw it, I'm done with the day, like unplugging everything and going to bed. And so if this is a good time now in the conversation, Hunter, I would love to talk about sort of a range of things we can do in the big picture to reduce anxiety.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I agree with Carla. Like there's no separation between body and mind. Our body mind is one system. As you take care of your body, you take care of your mind. As you move this energy out of your body, it helps the way your mind feels, the way your feelings do. That's one of the reasons I run. I do vigorous yoga too, and I run, and I have to kind of like give myself a sweat every day. And this is like most days, maybe 6 days a week, right? And because this is something I realized when I was a teenager. One of the first things I did to take care of myself was I started running, and I just I call it get my yayas out. I move that energy through my body. So getting that energy out and through your body is really important. Let's not forget the body in this factor, but other ways. And you talked about getting out in nature. It's hugely important.
And I've never gotten a clear explanation of the connection between being in nature and calming our bodies, but there is evidence for it. There's been some research on it, and it's certainly my experience. And when we go for a nice hike with the kids, like that's everything, because we're out in nature, we're moving our bodies. I'm not on my damn phone. Like it's awesome. Sleep is the biggest one. When I worked on an inpatient psychiatric unit, the most powerful intervention we could make for many of our patients was getting them to sleep again, because it's a very vicious cycle where being exhausted increases your anxiety, and then the more anxious you are, the less you sleep, which makes you more anxious. So if you need to work with a sleep specialist or a doctor or something to get your sleep back on track, but sleep is the foundation for all of it. And if you're, get off social media, get off the computer an hour or two, before you need to sleep. Dim the lights in your house, turn them down. Bright lights signal our brain that it's time to wake up. So don't do that. See it as a transition to sleep. I think many of us assume that we should be able to work, parent, be totally engaged in the world around us, and then at the right time, just flip it all off and go to sleep. And our brains don't work this way. So give yourself a chance to transition into sleep. Also, research has shown that the only way to increase the quality of our sleep, well, there's two ways actually that research has shown. One is not looking at screens in bed or before bedtime. That sort of light coming from our screens not only makes it harder to fall asleep, but it makes it more likely that we will have poor quality sleep. And vigorous exercise.
Yeah.
Directly related to the quality of your sleep. So sleeping, moving, being aware of your caffeine intake, breathing is a huge one. And breathing any way you can get it. Lots of deep breaths, doing a breath meditation every day where you're sitting and just being mindful of your breath, counting your breaths. I mean, breathing is like, oh my gosh, it's like my favorite thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Being grateful for your breath, because as long as you got that,
Yeah. So a really simple breathing technique that you can use to sort of tap into your body's natural rest and relax response, because they've discovered that each inhale is kind of like a mini stress response, and each exhale is a mini rest and relax response in the way it acts in the nervous system in the body. So a really simple way to tap into that is to breathe out a little longer than you breathe in. So one of the breaths I like to teach people is just count in as you breathe in for 5 and breathe out for a count of 8. And you can just do, 4 or 5 breaths, breathing in for 5, breathing out for 8. And you can feel the difference right away.
Love it. And, one of the times that I breathe every single night, I mean, I breathe all the time, but you know what I'm saying, is a moving you taught me, Hunter. I lay on the ground and I put my tushy against the wall and I put my legs up the wall. And I lay there and count my breathing, and it feels so good.
Yeah, legs up the wall is really, really rejuvenating. And we haven't even mentioned mindfulness meditation, which of course
I said mindfulness of breathing. I totally mentioned that.
You did, but I think we
should say more about it.
the meditation word, because it's it's something that is available to anyone if you can breathe. And so it's just about stopping and breathing and focusing our attention on one thing, focusing our attention on the present moment, and just simply bringing that attention back when it wanders. And this has been shown to really reduce anxiety and depression, increase well-being, increase health outcomes, all kinds of wonderful things. It's training the mind to have a single pointed attention can be really healing. And I'm sure you'll tell us a little bit more about that.
Oh my gosh, can we nerd out about this for a minute? I love it.
Just briefly.
Briefly. Okay, here's the one thing I want to say is, rather than drowning in our own anxious thoughts, when we notice those anxious thoughts and decide to focus on our breath instead, it's like coming up for a breath of fresh air. And yes, the anxious thoughts might come back, but instead of like wallowing in them, go back to breathing. And you're retraining your mind for how you're going to respond to the anxious thoughts. And the more you do that, look, my guess is our listeners, if they're anything like you and me, have had a ton of practice being anxious. So let's try practicing something else, breathing and feeling compassion for ourselves in response to our anxiety. And the more you practice that, the more naturally it will come to you when you're feeling anxious.
Yes. What we practice grows stronger. What we practice grows stronger.
That's right. Now, I want to throw in 2 more things briefly, which is that therapy, working with a trained mental health professional, can be incredibly helpful. Help you understand your anxiety so that you can better identify your triggers so it doesn't feel like it's coming from nowhere. It can help you figure out how to respond to your feelings, how you want to manage them. I mean, this can be very concrete in terms of strategizing. What are you going to do when you feel anxious? And just giving you a place where you can really explore this with someone who is neutral and supportive, and it feels confidential. It is confidential. It doesn't feel confidential. It is confidential. So I've been in therapy. I highly recommend it. And the last thing I want to say is that medication is a really important option for many, many folks. And so if you think this might be the option for you, and I have been on medication for anxiety, I'm not currently, but if I need it again, I'll go back on it. But I'm working hard to do all the stuff that we've talked about, because I'd rather do that than be on meds. But if you think meds can help you, talk to your mental health professional, a psychiatrist about it, because it can be really, really life-changing.
So there are a lot of tools. There are a lot of tools to take care of this. And sometimes it can feel like we don't have time for anything to do all these things. It may feel like a lot of to-dos, but I encourage you to think about how you can take a small step towards some of these things that Carla and I talked about, how you can maybe clean up your sleep habits. Maybe you can start to bring a little more vigorous exercise in, by taking the stairs. Or I'll do sometimes, if I can't, since I need to get my yayas out so much, I do the 7-minute workout, and my kids do it with me. It's funny. We are all like doing jumping jacks and squats together. Taking 5 minutes to sit in meditation, it has 0 side effects. It can be very powerful. So take some of these steps, integrate few of them into your life bit by bit. And, we spend a lot of time on social media. I guarantee you have 5 minutes to sit and be quiet, or 7 minutes to work up a little sweat at some point in your day. Even though I have to say, I love watching Glow on Netflix. That's my latest one. That's my plug. Gorgeous ladies of wrestling in the 80s. It's so hilarious. I'm not being paid for this even.
You're not? You should be. You should reach out to them and be like,
yes. Mark Maron.
Wait, Hunter, you're just trying to delay the inevitable. Our readers,
yeah. Here we go.
Our readers, our listeners are waiting to hear the title of your book.
Yay! I'm so excited. Okay, so this is my first book. I'm so thrilled about it, and I'm bringing all the things from the Mindful Parenting course, putting it into the book. It's all these wonderful things. So, dun 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 dun. I'm glad I get to reveal it with you, Carla. This is fun. So, the title of the book coming out soon is called Raising Good Humans. Yay!
Yay! Who doesn't want to do that? If you are like, I do not want to do that, then I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about you, because everybody wants to raise good humans. I love this title, Hunter. I'm so excited to read this book.
And so the subtitle is A Mindful Guide to Breaking the Cycle of Reactive Parenting and Raising Kind, Confident Kids.
Oh my gosh.
There you
I'm
go.
so excited about this book. Now, I need a little help from our listeners and from you, Hunter, speaking of subtitles. So my book is called How to Stop Losing Your Beep with Your Kids. Mm-hmm. And my editor would like me to have a subtitle to make it clear to people that it's not just like a totally snarky, sarcastic book filled with the S word, but there's actually really useful advice out there for parents who want to stay calm with their children. So if any of your listeners have a subtitle, for example, all I've got so far is something like, how to be patient when your buttons are being pushed, or something really boring and blah like that. I don't have anything. So if your listeners want to submit a subtitle, and if I pick it, I'll send them a free copy of my book when it comes out, and they can either leave the comment on your website, or they can email me, and they can just Google me and they'll find my email address and they can send it to me.
Okay. There you go, dear listener. You've got, if you have some ideas for Carla's subtitle, and if you like the title Raising Good Humans, please let us know. We would love, of course, your feedback. So
it's a great title.
Thank you. So I hope this has been a helpful episode, helpful conversation. I always love talking to you, Carla. Thank you.
I love talking to you. Thank you.
Where can people find you in the world?
They can find me at carlanaumburg.com.
Awesome. And you can always reach out to me, and you can find Carla in the show notes at mindfulmamapodcast.com. Carla, this has been so fun, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Hunter, and be well, all of our listeners.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope this podcast really helped you. Just having this conversation with Carla has helped me. All the things here on the podcast, I really teach what I need to learn most. Like, these are the vital things I feel like for my life as well as my clients. These are really important things. So I hope that this has helped you today feel it, to heal it, all those wonderful things. So if you are in California, I may have a spot left in my California one-day retreat on November 2nd. You can find out more about that at mindfulmamamentor.com/California, I believe. Let me just check on that. I think it's California. Yes, mindfulmamamentor.com/California. And thank you so much to those people who left reviews on Stitcher and iTunes. It makes a huge, huge difference. If you haven't done that yet and you're enjoying the podcast, please do tell some friends about the podcast, share it on social media, tag me, let me know, and leave a review. It makes a big difference in the sort of the iTunes algorithm. The more reviews, the better for helping get this message out to the world. And yeah, it makes a big, big difference. So please do help me out. Take a minute to pop over to iTunes, search for Apple Podcasts, to search for the Mindful Mama podcast, and you'll find it and leave a review. And they mean the world to me. They make a huge, huge difference. So thank you so much. I'm so glad to connect with you here today. Coming up soon, I do have my episode with Daniel Siegel coming up. And I'm going to have some other great episodes coming your way. We will get that Lenore Skenazy episode coming up soon. We have so many great guests to share with you and other things to share with you. So, and I will also be sharing with you some of the, today we talked about anxiety and how to deal with it. And I think we're going to talk about taking that a little bit further. So thinking about the idea of happiness, right? Then how to lean into happiness more. And we'll be talking about that coming up soon too. So I think next week. So it'll be a surprise, like opening up a present. What will it be? You'll find out on Tuesday, I guess. So wishing you a beautiful week. Hope to connect with you in some of the ways, maybe in person in California, or maybe over the web with your review or with a program. My coaching groups are coming up soon. You can learn more about that. But thanks for listening. Sending you all my wishes for peace, all my wishes for bouncing back when life inevitably gets hard, and it does all the time. So let us help each other bounce back. And we can do that by coming together. So thank you so much, my friend. Namaste.